preparing live stream. And if anyone's joined, then we'll let them in.
I can paste the screenshots from Victoria into the doc, if that helps.
Yeah, that would be good. If you can maybe paste them in the, do you have the issue with the, for the notes and everything? Let me paste it. Retrospective, this one. So if you can paste the screenshots there. One of the things that we are trying to do is to align more our design with Victoria. So implementing new themes is easier, but I mean, we can go through, I mean, we'll go through it a bit later. Tony will explain a couple of things he's been doing to allow theming into the extension more easily. Okay, so then I think that we can start. So from the previous meeting, we have the designs that Victoria was working on that you're going to be sharing. Tony has been making progress. He's finished the implementation of the edge side of things into the extension, and he's currently working on the enabling theming. I don't know if you want to do the demo right now, just for recording purposes.
Sure, yeah, let's kick that off on the early side.
The idea is to use as much as possible CSS variables to make things work.
Let's see. I'll show the visual first here, and then we can, let's see, is that sharing my window here?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is the design, the Fluent variant of the design that we have here. And I've just mocked up just some of the early controls. So this doesn't take in any of Victoria's work yet, since that was more on the results side. But looking at kind of the Photon design guidelines, I just mocked up a couple of the early controls like checkboxes and radio buttons, just so we had kind of an example of how this can work with the theming system I've set up. So that's about all there is to see here. I'll jump over to the code so we can kind of see how that's actually set up. Okay, so basically, I've set this up so that, as Anton said, a lot of the times we can just do separate CSS variables. So at the top level for the app, we have some base CSS variables that are shared across the entire project, and then a set of customizations. I mean, this is mostly for colors, for Fluent, and then for Photon. And then at any given component level, we're allowing importing a CSS file for each of the design systems, and then we have a custom React hook that will give us the right class names for the current design system. So if so checkbox is one of the other examples here, where there's actually not a lot of overrides for Fluent, because it uses the same colors for the checked state as the unchecked state. But then for Photon, we have a different background color and then a different check color in the checked state. So we have those overrides there. And then they bring in those different theme colors that were defined further up at the app level. So that should give us enough flexibility to do any customization for any given control. If it's just colors, we'll do it at the top level, and some other minor things we might do in CSS variables at the top level. And then if there's anything a little bit more nuanced we need to do, we can get down to an individual component and have alternate style sheets. And they both derive from the same base. And the way the typing's set up here is it requires them to have the same class names. So if I'd have to regen this, so I'm not going to do it right now, but it will be a compile time error if you put a class name in one of them but not the other. So we make sure we're covering the same set of elements in both designs. So yeah, that's pretty much how it's set up. There's probably at least half a dozen to a dozen other ways to do this. So if we move forward and we find part of this not working for us, we can of course revisit and tweak things as necessary.
Yeah, I think that the idea is that once you start implementing the photon style more truly, adapt and see if we have to revisit this or enable any type of feature. So
yeah, and I mean, if need be, this could also go to a third level where we can have a higher order component that's swapping out different components for different designs. If there needs to be different interactivity for one design system, different interactive behavior for one design system versus another, because we can expose kind of a lower level piece that would tell us what the name of the current design system, and then we could flip which component we're rendering based on that. And that would probably give us the maximum set of flexibility, but I don't think we'll need to do that for most cases.
okay.
All right.
Okay, so then the next items were to get the extension signed for sharing with the Firefox people. I don't know if anyone has had the time to install it and try it.
I did.
Okay.
I did install the extension. It worked well. There was a little warning about the manifest file.
Oh, the persistent background pages,
Yes.
I believe. Yes, because we use that, and it's in our build because we use the same manifest regardless of which browser we're targeting, but that particular feature isn't implemented in Firefox. It's true.
Right.
And what that means is that basically our background page is always active because we don't, with the event pages, the non-persistent background pages, when we're running in Chrome or Chromium Edge, it actually will only activate our background page when messages are being sent to it.
Right, right.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to follow up with, we could remove that, like just as part of doing the different theming, we've already this is starting to set up the idea that we might have multiple different outputs depending on which browser we're shipping to. And so we could remove that warning kind of as part of that process by not setting that flag when we're building for Firefox.
Right, understand.
All right.
So I installed and played around with the Firefox extension. I noticed there was a slow script warning when I was running a scan. I left a comment on the GitHub issue about that.
Yes, thanks, Brendan. Appreciate it. I went and tried to repro. I haven't been able to yet, so there could be a little bit of a difference between machines as well. But that's actually a good point for me to bring up. If you do hit anything that seems to be running particularly slow, the two categories I'd recommend turning off just to test if it makes a difference are accessibility and compatibility. There are places in both of those hints right now that we know we need to improve. So if we've got like if there's a perf issue that's tied to one of those, I'm going to assume it's one of the things we know about until we get that resolved. But if it affects you, even when you're not running the accessibility and compatibility categories, then that's more interesting.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'll try to get a video capture or some more specific repro steps.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I think that we've done anything on accessibility on our side. So I'll make a note to ping Amanda this week to see how they are testing DevTools in Edge for accessibility and do the same thing with us. Well, do you know how they are doing it? Or you're mute. Let me unmute you.
Unmute. There we go. Perfect. Unmute. Yeah, they're doing a combination of things. They're using accessibility insights as kind of like the main kind of checker. And then they're doing some manual testing with NVDA because UIA isn't actually in Chromium yet. And then we're also doing accessibility mini specs where it's a real lightweight specking process that requires you to just document out your tab stops, your up and down, left and right arrowing, your what a narrator should actually read out like for each thing. So like labels, any announcements, things like that. And then if you're doing any semantic things like headers, you know, where are all of your headers located? And then I don't know if it applies to us for for web content, landmarks is a big thing, and for applications, it's kind of like a weird thing. Landmarks to me is like for more web content. Like I'm looking at a blog, I need to understand like this is a banner, this is an article, this is like a header. For our UI, it might not be directly applicable. So we've found in the dev tools specifically, it hasn't been applicable. So it's a mixture of stuff right now.
Okay, I'll ping her and see what we can actually automate on our side, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, right now it's been manual. Like we take one tool and we manually go through it.
Okay. The next one is.
Oh, sorry, one follow-up. Sorry, I was on mute. One follow-up to that, Paul. We are working on getting the accessibility insights tool as part of our build pipeline. Is that right?
That I don't know what the status is on that. That's been kind of a lower priority thing right now, but I know Amanda has been looking into it.
Because one idea that we had for App Insights was for accessibility insights was to have like the pages spin up without in a regular web server without the dev tools and run it in there, because we can have like we only have like 2 or 3 pages and we can mock the data. And at least in our case, that should be a lot easier than the regular dev tools. So yeah, we might go down that path at least for accessibility insights.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
Yep. Webhint is based on like Webhint uses Axe and so does accessibility insights. So I'm like wondering if we can use Webhint to automate some of our CI/CD work around accessibility. That's sort of an interesting thought to chat with Amanda about.
Yeah, it would certainly be something we could do for the pieces that are automated. Accessibility insights, if I recall correctly, also includes a set of manual tests that aren't part of Axe.
Right.
So it's run those as well.
Okay. Tony, do you have the time to check if we can bundle App Insights or not? Or if that policy applies to us?
Oh, yeah. At least from what I looked at, it looked like from the policy perspective, I didn't see anything specific that would allow block us from doing that, other than the fact that we are currently on the newest version and it hasn't quite come out of RC yet, and we cannot, per the policy for the extension store, we can't use a dependency that's beta or similar.
Okay.
The other thing we were talking about there, though, is it might just be lighter weight for our bundle at the end of the day to just make the REST calls. That's part of what we talked about with Harold last time. And it looks like we have the option to do that. And it's honestly not that much different than the API we're using. We have to actually trigger the HTTP call ourselves, but the data structure is pretty much the same.
Okay, we should make an issue for that, thinking about okay. Okay. Well, I don't see Harold. This was for the surveys that we were starting to think. Brendan, Paul, you haven't think with Harold about that, right? All the questions that we want to ask users once we start shipping this to get feedback.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't synced with Harold yet.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, between Bill and IO and all of that, I was expecting it. Okay, so for the next one. Okay, going to the, I think that closes all the previous open items that we have, so I'll move a few ones to the next one. And now new ones. Well, we finished the extension, at least the V1, so I think that's the big win. Biggest problems, at least for my side, has been Azure DevOps. I've been struggling a lot with that. With the Windows version, they are running an old version of Chrome in there, and it took me like 1 day or 2 to figure it out, and that's why the connector puppeteer was failing, or that's my assumption. And on top of that, I try another half day to upgrade it, and it's impossible. So I had to open like multiple issues until they finally understood what my problem was, and I'm still blocked on that side. So not a lot of progress on the connector puppeteer. And well, everyone else has been mostly oof and traveling and doing fun things, right?
I was also going to throw in, I know, Hamza started up a discussion on Bugzilla around proposing an inspect API for the DevTools network tab. So we've started the discussion there. Sorry it took me a while to get my initial response to that. I was kind of heads down this week, but I did
No problem.
put a reply on that yesterday so that we can kind of continue to iterate there.
Yeah, I'll paste the link to the meeting dog pointing to the bug. Let me see. Where could I paste it? Here is the bug. So yeah, I filed that bug just to have a place where we can discuss, and I also CC'd Luca Greco, aka RPL, who is member of the add-ons team, and he's also involved in API design, because these APIs or the API you need for that extension, it doesn't exist. Not even Chrome is implementing this thing, but there are similar APIs for the inspector panel. It is possible to select and to call a select API, select function, and pass an existing object to it, like a DOM element. And the result is that the panel is selected and the specific element in that panel automatically is selected. So it's very similar to what we want for the network panel, with the difference that we don't have that object. There is no object on the page which would represent the request. That there could be XHR object potentially, but that's probably not the way to go. And so Luca suggested how these APIs could look like, and I think Tony, you replied also with some suggestions.
Yeah.
And it looks actually.
Yeah, and I just put up a proposal of just kind of one idea of how I thought we might call it. Certainly not what I think might be the final API design, but
right.
Specifically just wanted to make sure I was covering the use cases that we would be looking for. So we had that in there for webhint. Yeah,
I think what you suggested is good. What Luca is talking about is very similar. He's building on top of that idea. What Luca is suggesting also is to be kind of very in line with what the inspector panel does, or the APIs for the inspector panel do. So we would be able to not only select the network panel, but also a side panel. Mm-hmm. Perhaps we could also highlight specific header if that's what you need. And there will be also a callback, like on selection change listener. So we could listen for selection changes in that panel, which is probably not that important to you, but could be a nice way to design these APIs, and also get selected element back, just like it works for the inspector panel. And that argument passed into that select function would be kind of a hard similar object, or an object which is very similar to the HAR spec. And the user would be able to specify not only URL, but maybe a timestamp, so we know if there are multiple requests with the same URL, we could pass more information, so it's easier to identify this specific request. It looks good. I think this is the right way to go. I'm not saying this is final, but also at the same time, I don't know how much time it can take to kind of agree on these new APIs, because it's a big thing. As soon as we commit to it, it cannot be changed. So I don't know that process from the add-on team. There is somebody else from the add-on team CC'd, so hopefully we can get feedback soon. Okay. But I have no idea how long it could take.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I think from our perspective, it's one of those that once we have it, we'll definitely be eager to use it. There's still a lot we can do without it, so it doesn't block us from moving forward. But I'm definitely eager to see it continue. So thank you for starting that.
Cool. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Next item is the status of the browser extension. We've already seen it. We have bundles for all of those, for Chromium browsers and for Firefox. One question that we have is, can there be like multiple admins for the same add-on on Firefox, or is there just a single account that can be used? Because I couldn't find anything into the UI, but maybe I'm not looking into the right place. So.
I don't think so. I don't think it's possible. I can ask around. Mm-hmm. I was not using that UI for some time. Mm-hmm. As far as I remember, it was not possible. It was only for one user. But I can ask around.
Okay. Yeah, Yeah, so we don't have to be sharing like passwords around the team.
Right, I understand. Let me make a note.
Okay, yeah.
Let me quickly find it.
We have, yeah, it's in the agenda items. And it's, okay.
Anton, did we want to go through any of the other 2 pages in the UI since we've only looked at the configuration page so far? Or
I mean, if you want to demo it, yeah, it looks awesome. So yeah, any opportunity that you have to brag about it.
I'll bring it back up here just so we can see all the panels.
I'm sure that Stephanie will be happy to see her design implemented.
Yeah, I'm guessing there's probably at least something on the results panel where I still need to fix a little alignment. So hopefully she can point that out for me. So yeah, we've got this responsive so that we can, we've kind of got a max width. As we get a little narrower, I did take a little leeway to let it condense a little bit before we flip to vertical stacking. And then we're keeping consistent space here. So it lets us get to a pretty narrow view for the configuration. While we're scanning, we now have an overlay so we can start a scan from the configuration page, from the results page, or from the error page if you happen to hit that. On the results, the categories on the left can actually deep link us down. So if I click on like PWA, or if I've expanded some of these, I can jump back up to accessibility or back down to security. So those are just anchors in the page.
Can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
Harald is just trying to join, but it looks like somebody needs to invite him.
Oh, let me see.
He sent a message to the chat.
Okay.
Yay. I'm in.
Oh,
Harold.
Sorry about that.
Just watch through the window. You're all working, so.
Okay,
I'll finish up here and then we can get back to some of those other questions I think we had earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have the results here. So we can link over to either the sources debugging, sources panel if we're running in Chromium. This is one of the places we've discussed before. We don't have an equivalent yet in Firefox. And of course, in a minified page, it's not all that interesting when the column number is way off there, because there's that limitation even in Chromium where we can only pass the line number. So it's a little more interesting in a non-minified page at the moment.
right.
Hopefully we can.
So in Chrome, it points to the sources panel.
Yeah, it's, sorry, let me pull that up on my other screen here real quick. Trying to remember what the specific API was. We've talked about this before, but yeah, so it's the DevTools panels open resource API. And then in both, we're using the console inspect API to get us over to that element in the elements panel. So that works in Firefox as well already. And we had this before. I mean, most of this is just moving this stuff around. I mean, these capabilities, other than some of the UI conveniences of the anchors, were already here. And we've added another UI affordance to filter down to just the hints that have actually triggered something and exclude the past categories so that we can see, focus in on what we might actually need to change. So yeah, some cache control hints here. And then from here, we can either kick off another scan or go back to the configuration page if we want to tweak something here. So that covers, I think, most of the UI updates. Oh yeah, the other piece is there was work on the keyboard accessibility. So we've got the focus recs, and I went through and tested a bunch of the tab order and stuff to make sure that things are looking good from there. And there's a dark theme variant as well, which I didn't switch over to, but.
Good.
Okay, so now that Harald, have you get the time to install the extension on Firefox?
I know, that was at Google I/O, so
okay.
not much of a good time.
Yeah, so now that one of the things that we discussed last meeting was that once we had the bundle for both browsers to start self-hosting it and starting to get feedback, I think that at least that's what our plan is going to be inside the Microsoft Edge team. I'm also planning on tweeting about it. And one of the issues I've opened is 1640 with some of the things that we are most concerned about, or things that we want to get feedback about. Let me share my screen and also the issue number. Okay, in the chat. Is this? Oops, it doesn't. This one, answer mine. Let me know when you can.
Yep. I guess
have it open. Okay. So we thought that for making it easier for people to report issues, instead of just opening a new issue each time, just go to this epic, so they can track the list of known issues that we have, and then if there isn't anything else, like add a comment. So that way it's more streamlined, and we have some templates for reporting bugs, but that might be complicated and maybe prevent some of the feedback. And I think that right now what we want is like more reach. And these are kind of the main things that we are most concerned about. And I think that we've discussed those in the past, but I think that the most, one of those is if the extension is generating too much noise, or if we are having like false positives. And that's especially in the case for deprecated or new CSS. Like we try to do like progressive enhancement, and we have some properties that we know that are used or that are safe to use, even if they are not supported in other browsers. But we want like to do like a source code that list and have people to help us fill those and make sure that we are not flagging things that we shouldn't be flagging. The other one is that right now everything is configured as a warning instead of an error, and that's on purpose. It's like we haven't spent the time to go or to rationalize which ones are more important to fix, and well, we are looking to everyone to help us with that and going through this process. Like there are some things that probably can be a warning or even be disabled by default. Some of the things that we were thinking is, for example, the meta-carsed UTF-8. Like probably the browser is going to get that right, even if it's not specified. So that should be, or maybe disabled, or maybe it's a warning in that case. But yeah, it's like I think that we should rationalize that to not overwhelm the developer too much once this goes as stable.
Yeah, just to jump in for a second there, I think the goal of where we'd like to land is that we, when someone comes in, we make a first impression, we're giving them feedback that they feel like, yes, I should go and change that. Where some of the finer points we may want to save for later engagement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other one is the browsers list. By default, I think that we are using the default list. And some people might agree about that list. Some we won't agree about that list of supported browsers. So it's like, yeah, we want feedback about those ones. So I don't know if there is any other thing that you think that we should be asking people for. And we can always tweak this list later on. So
yeah, I think it's a good initial list of the high level points that we care about. I think having this first run of polish, just addressing the main concerns, and then we'll probably quickly actually get throws at users in Firefox by the experimentation pipeline, and then get some more fine-grained surveys probably in there, like which which tips were most useful, things like that. So right now the zip files basically have to like unzip it locally and install it as a temporary extension. Did you try already to use the WebEx?
Yeah. So the Firefox one that you can download from here is signed, so you can do it. I put some instructions, so install along from file. It works perfectly. It works.
Okay. I just downloaded it as a zip file. That's the new
Yeah,
one.
you have to rename it and remove the .zip, and the reason is that GitHub doesn't allow me to open XPIs, or doesn't allow me to upload XPI. So just remove the zip and it should work.
Yeah, I usually direct XPI, and I think as soon as it notices that an XPI is downloaded with the right headers, then it will prompt to install as well.
Okay, can you repeat that?
So if the XPI has the right headers, then the install usually works. So you click an XPI file basically, and Firefox will prompt you with some extra warning attached because you're not downloading it from the add-ons page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, trying to think, because I mean the file is uploaded directly to the GitHub issue, and it blocks I think that the only files that you can upload are like Excel files, TXT, zips, and something else. So
yeah, maybe we could host it somewhere else and link from there, like our own website or something.
Yeah, and we could try to do that. I don't know. Yeah, we can look.
I don't know what would be easiest, but I'm sure there's somewhere we can host it.
I mean, these ways I recommend it. Probably just submit it to AMO, and then you have it hosted on AMO, and you can link people there. As long as you don't promote it, you wouldn't really get too much users on it. I'm not sure how hidden you want to keep it off mainstream currently.
Okay, so we can. So you mean like linking to the unlisted extension?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. We can do it. Okay. Actions.
Because this also means then you went through the review cycle and got one of those reviews at least in, so we have some eyes on it, and I can escalate any.
How? So if we update that version, will the users get updated as well in the unlisted version? Okay, so we need to figure out how to reuse the GUID of the extension, because right now it's generated automatically every time that we sign it.
Yeah, but it updates in the background, so it's pretty transparent or like non-visible.
Yeah, but I mean, if we want them to get updated, we need to reuse that GUID.
Yeah.
Okay. And increment the version. Do we have to increment? Do you know if we have to increment the version or not?
I think to make new that WebEx sign will require you to have a new version to increment. Okay. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can. Okay. Then we have an open PR for the sign-in, so we'll discuss that. One question that we had about the extensions before, maybe is like, do you know if there can be like multiple admins for the same extension, or does it have to be the same account?
Yeah, I heard that question. I think I just looked into AMO and so the add-ons page, and it looks like there is an authors page where you can add multiple authors.
Okay.
So there is owners and developers. So you should be able to add multiple email addresses to people who own. I don't know if I can. Like, let's try Hansa. Go ahead, answer Hansa as an owner to my add-on, and yeah, there can be multiple owners, and you can list them or not list them. So that's
good.
Okay, and they can publish them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Multiple. Okay, I have it here. Perfect. Okay, so okay, so we should start. I'll make the updates in this issue and give you an update on GitHub once it's published on. I'm linking to the unlisted version, and then we can start sharing it internally, and then we can go reach out for more people.
Question on prior topics has Hansa, somebody from our side has shared Victoria's redesigns.
Yeah, it's in the doc, in the meeting notes doc.
Oh, okay, sweet, awesome.
Do you have the link to the doc?
I don't have it again.
Okay, it's in the. So let me.
Is it another?
Where do I have the chat?
Is it in the
I just sent it.
Sorry. Yeah,
Harald, you-
cool. As I shared it.
Yep.
Cool. Any comments on the redesign? Because I think like one concern I had, if we touch too many things up, if it's just not just color and font and adding adjustments, then it becomes harder to actually apply. What were people's thoughts on that?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question there, Harold.
Oh yeah. So with the redesign, one concern I had, if we change too many things in severe way, it becomes more of like a Zen garden challenge where with CSS you try to make the design as much as possible, but not just the theming CSS where you just change some colors and some icons, but it becomes way harder. So is the design currently, do you feel that it's still close enough to be easily applied?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we have enough flexibility. I think part of the continued discussion we will want to have is to, when there are cases where some of the content might slightly differ, figure out if we want to align in one direction or the other, to try to keep those the same. But if ultimately for fitting in one design system or another, I don't think you'd necessarily been on the call at this point, but we kind of have 3 tiers of customizing this we can do. 2 that I've put an example of in the code so far. So we can do, CSS variables or just the color level stuff or some of the basic positioning, sizing pieces. And then we can do alternate CSS files for a given control. So we can have one for Fluent, we can have one for Photon. When we want to tweak more than just colors, to actually have maybe a slightly different layout. And kind of at the 3rd level, if we want, we can do a higher order component that switches out a different component depending on which design system we're using. I haven't done an example of that one yet, but there's nothing really stopping us from doing it if we need to. Which should, at that level, we should have as much flexibility as we need. But my hope is that we can stay, as aligned as possible, because I think from a maintenance perspective, long term, that the more we do different, the easier it will be to introduce bugs if you don't remember to go test in every design.
Yeah, makes sense. Question on the accessibility checks. So right now, these are a lot of elements must have sufficient color contrast. I'm currently seeing, but they link to a view source tab and not the inspector. I assume that's a bug, or that's
okay. So the
both,
link,
right?
the link from the source line is to well, we want it to go to the debugging tab in Firefox, but that's the DevTools panel open resource API that we've been talking about.
Yeah. So yeah.
And then if it's a particular element, there should also be a blue rectangle in the top, a little blue icon in the top right corner of the source.
Yeah.
And that will take you to the elements panel. So that's kind of our little inspect element entry.
Yeah. My bad. Yeah. It's
no,
now it's on a.
It's a valid question. And exactly what the expectation should be for either of those, as I don't think we necessarily have it right either. So that's the sort of stuff, as we see how people use it and what they expect, we might tweak things a little bit. So
yeah, we have some existing designs components in our own UI where we have this little target icon next to any element that you can then show in the inspector. So I'll check if our mockups have those. Probably.
Now that we have more screens from your design, maybe it makes sense for. I think it makes sense for Stephanie to review those and maybe have a meeting in you and Victoria to see if there are things that we should pick from one or the other and how we can further align and where there are things that we can't reconcile because both systems are different, and then see what we should do. What do you think, Stephanie?
Yeah,
Yep,
makes sense. Yep.
that sounds good.
Okay, then I'll make
Yeah, and the expectation is that we're working on applying the design, right? On the Firefox side.
sorry,
And
can
so-
you repeat?
The expectation is that we're providing the resources to apply the Firefox design.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but we'll make sure you've got whatever infrastructure you need to do it. And that's where I've tried to set up the infrastructure and give some examples so that I showed at the beginning of the meeting, I did like the checkbox and radio button styles from the Photon design guide and have those in my current PR.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. Do you know, because your current PR for the infrastructure, right, probably is going to be finished by mid next week or later, well, probably later next week because you are off Monday and Tuesday, right? Do you know when?
Yeah, well, it depends what feedback you have. It's nearly done if you just want to merge it.
Okay, so do you know when?
But yes, probably by the end of next week, since I'll be out Monday and Tuesday.
Okay, well, I'll try to review it after this meeting.
So what's the plan for outreach? You mentioned on your side, some people will try to drum up some more users to give feedback. Is it something? It sounds like something we should collaborate on because we have some channels as well that we can use. And I wanted to have a Hacks blog post soon about webhint, just to get some more eyes on it.
Yeah, I was thinking to start probably like a small audience, like people that we know that are like going to give like positive or like good feedback instead of just broadcasting it to the whole world. So I was thinking probably like internally in our case, maybe a tweet from our account because people that are probably going to try it more enthusiastic about the project, and maybe the same on Firefox. See how it goes during the next two weeks. See what issues they found, and if we can fix something, some of those or the major things, and then probably by the next sprint, then we can, and during these next 2 weeks, maybe work on a plan to reach like a bigger audience, and then we can work, or you can work with Paul and with Brendan about the questions that we want to ask and the surveys for the developers, and then like in 2 weeks time, like reach out to the whole developer audience. If we feel comfortable with what we have. If we find out that during these 2 weeks, like there are something like major that we really need to fix and it's going to take more time, then we scale back.
Okay, sounds good. I think we can help by sharing that internally as well. So we have a lot of web devs working on various properties, and people are also working on standards and other stuff and best practices and accessibility. So I think the feedback also helps.
That would be great. Yeah, it's as we said previously, like we are concerned, it's like what we want is for people to use it and say like, yeah, this feedback sounds good. I should go and fix these things instead of just feeling overwhelmed and saying like, I know this tool is too pedantic for me.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll make an internal email to interested mailing lists at Mozilla, link to the add-ons page. Hopefully that's up then, so it's easy to install, and then linking to the GitHub issue for people to guide the feedback.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we have that for tracking, and then I think that the next, there was one thing that you wanted to discuss, Tony, that was the MDN utility.
Yeah, and it's not something we have to dig in too deep here, but as part of sort of doing some recent refactoring around the Compat API we put together using the MDN data, we've kind of come up with a query utility that we're using that I think might be useful more broadly than just the webhint project, because the browser Compat data repo is just the raw JSON data. There's no APIs to aid actually querying it. And so we put something together that basically at the API level is like, you can tell us, okay, you want to query support for this tag, this element name or this attribute on this element name or this CSS property, where you're just kind of you're ignorant of where it might actually live in the data structure, because sometimes you might have to look in multiple places depending on if you don't know if it's an element specific attribute or a global HTML attribute. And so it does a little bit of that extra walking for you, handles kind of the prefix, unprefix case, which can also be represented in the data multiple different ways. Could be a property, if it was browser specific to begin with, it might be a property that has the prefix in the name in the data. But if it's a standardized API, it'll be a prefix name with the prefix listed under the browser support entry. So there's a few different pieces like that. And I think, it's kind of closer to the is supported, although more, it is supported for can I use is pretty much just kind of a simple string match. So, I mean, it's somewhat like it, but it's a bit more structured and being specific about what type of data you're looking for. So yeah, I don't know if there'll be interest, but we have it. It's in our utilities. And it's certainly something that if there was interest, it could be worth extracting out. Yeah,
I guess just to file an issue on the MDN page itself, on the MDN compute data project. I think we also have an engineer internally who's looking at in-page auditing, like real-time auditing for CSS purely. So he might be also interested. Okay. I'll actually link you to that project that's not public, as all things are. Hansa, do you have that link ready of the layout team's auditing project?
Layout teams what?
The layout team had this little in-page auditing project that they were working on. Just I
don't have it.
I'll squirrel up the link. Probably even get there. It is. I'll post a link here. I'll post a screenshot into. Post a screenshot into meeting notes, just so because it's related. So we have. Self-centered. We post it in the end. It's kind of it's exploring the other side of what webhint kind of. So it's saying inspiration. Kind of how do we get those information in context?
Mm-hmm.
So and also real time. So that's like you don't have to go to the auto tab and actually click it. Yeah. On a side note, I talked to Paul Irish yesterday, and it seems like in January the audit tab got more users than the performance tab. So audits are hot.
Yeah.
But they're pushing mostly performance on their side. So right.
Yes.
All other things are secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Dada is one of DevTools engineers. He's based in Japan. And it's this, kind of project to explore.
Okay.
Context auditing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to take a look at.
Yeah. And it sounds like the thing you're working, the query system might actually be useful for his work as well. Great. So next up, if we have some action items, I'm gonna add mine as well. Internal outreach. So should we plan for? I guess in 1 week or so we have a good sense if the feedback is all negative or mostly positive, and then within a week probably we can tell like if we want to start planning on some blog posts to get the long tail of users in. Or I mean Hex as a channel is reaching to a lot of early adopter anyways, so it's still sub audience of the web that likes cool stuff. So cool. It's a useful channel probably to tap into as a next audience.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Okay,
then I think that the only remaining thing for us is backlog for next sprint. I think that Bootstrap has dropped, and that's the only one that is not working on puppeteer. So we can maybe sync with Bootstrap later for the online scanner to see how it's going with the serverless implementation. I think that everything else is our idea is to there is a bottleneck in the compat API hint right now. There is some refactor that Tony wants to do that will help the extension run faster. That's the top priority. And then we expect people to find issues while they are testing. So mainly focusing on fixing those issues for the next couple of weeks. And I hope to get the Puppeteer connector. It's running already in Mac and Linux. Windows is failing on CI, but it's working on my machine. And I hope to get like the custom actions for the users done, and then we can publish it and go from there. And I owe you the list of APIs that we are using from Puppeteer, but I wanted to wait until I have everything implemented already in place, because otherwise it's just like launch, connect, and on request, on response, like the most basic things. But I might be using some of the more advanced ones during the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
So I'll give you the final one during the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. If you checked on Google I/O a bit, yesterday we had the next big announcement for Firefox Puppeteer. So Andre and Joel from the Chrome DevTools team were on stage. Basically as the first thing, like, oh, now it's also works in Firefox.
Good.
However, with enough, it's experimental and it's a prototype. So there's still a lot of open questions around the exact implementation. But yeah, having those list of APIs kind of helps us to better inform our MVP planning.
And the idea is to use because I saw that there is like the code name is Juggler. Or I don't know how you pronounce that.
That's a Chrome version of it. Kind of they hack together. It's like we have so many re-architecturing projects going on in Firefox, so we have to be very careful to make the new infrastructure fit into what's in the ongoing work. And basically, what Andre from the Chrome DevTools did, he just forked Firefox 63 and he hacked away and made it work. So they took the super fast path and were on the cautious slow path to actually make it future proof.
Okay.
So but there's working well, and it's a good repository of solutions and how their expectations are, how the code works, and the semantics, because otherwise it's not documented or other things. Yeah.
And the idea is to use the main Puppeteer project or Puppeteer core, or is it going to be a separate package?
It's apparently it will be. That was still one of the things we were aiming for CDP level compatibility. So Puppeteer would just speak CDP and work, but the Chrome team is most of their assumptions are that this will break all the time because they keep breaking CDP. They're pushing people to use Puppeteer. So you're on the right track. You're not using CDP because it's Puppeteer is a stable surface versus CDP is the moving target. I'm not sure how EDP works because it only targets console and debugger, which are the stable parts, right? But everything beyond that's not burned in by Node.js and VS Code is not for grabs anytime into something.
Okay. Well, we'll see how the project works. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Nope. Okay. Well, right on time, 10 a.m. Thank you very much. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks.
Have a nice weekend.
See ya.
Have a good one.